Title: The Elevator That Doesn't Exist. After midnight, the night shift. Lena hated night shifts. But she needed the money, and this job night security at a luxury apartment complex in Chicago paid more than anything she could get working retail. The hours dragged on, though. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the faint click of the elevator going up and down endlessly, the way the shadows shifted in the hallways as the wind howled outside. She'd never been a fan of late nights, especially in a building that seemed like it was on the verge of falling apart. But tonight, something felt off. The usual noise in the halls, the soft murmur of distant conversations, was absent. It was too quiet for a building this big. She took her seat behind the security desk, reviewing the latest round of cameras. The place was mostly empty, a few late-night stragglers coming home from work or a night out. Standard. Just a few shifts before her vacation. Easy money. She was about to check her phone when the elevator chimed. Ding. Lena glanced at the screen. The elevator was on the 10th floor. That was strange. It hadn't moved for hours. The old, creaky elevator was usually slow, but it didn't stop randomly like this. She glanced back at the display. The elevator had moved to the 13th floor. Ding. She frowned. The 13th floor? There wasn't a 13th floor in this building. It wasn't that it was unlucky. It was literally not on the blueprint, no records of it at all. Just a blank spot in the system. Lena had asked about it when she first started. The building's old, they said. Some things just get lost in the paperwork. But everyone in the building knew the 13th floor didn't exist. She leaned forward in her chair, watching the screen, unsure if it was some glitch. The elevator moved again from the 13th to the 7th and the 5th, stopping at random floors. Ding. And then it stopped on a ground floor. Lena's stomach sank. The camera displayed the usual view, the elevator doors, the empty lobby, but something wasn't right. She zoomed in. She could see faint outlines of people inside, but the faces were distorted, like the image was shifting. No, that wasn't right. She pressed the play button again to double-check. It wasn't her eyes playing tricks. A woman stood in the elevator, her face too blurry to make out, but it wasn't just one woman. The more Lena focused, the more she realized. There were other figures standing, but they looked out of place, like shadows that didn't fit with the lights of the elevator. They flickered, distorted with static, but they weren't real. She blinked, and suddenly, the elevator doors closed. The lobby was empty again. What the hell? Her heartbeat quickened. Lena grabbed the phone and called the building's manager. "Hey, Steve," she said, her voice shaky. "I know you told me about the 13th floor, but something weird's going on. I just saw..." The line cut. Static. Lena pulled the phone away, checking the screen. No bars. The Wi-Fi, which had been working just fine a moment ago, dropped out. The whole building went silent. She stood up, feeling the chill creep over her skin. She tried to shake it off, pacing the small security desk. It was nothing, she told herself. Probably just a glitch with the elevator system. Ding. Her breath caught. The elevator. She checked the screen again. The elevator was back on the ground floor. No one was inside, but the doors opened the same eerie, empty lobby reflected back at her. "Okay, you're freaking out," she muttered to herself. Just as she was about to call Steve again, the phone rang. She jumped, heart racing. "Hello?" She answered quickly. The voice on the other end was crackling. "You shouldn't have answered." Lena's stomach churned. The voice sounded distorted, as if it was struggling to come through some kind of interference. It didn't sound like Steve. "What do you mean?" she whispered. The voice on the other end spoke again, barely audible. "The elevator isn't for you. It never has been." Lena's breath hitched. She looked at the elevator display on the camera feed. The elevator was moving again. "Wait, who is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The line cut out. Silence. Suddenly, the elevator dinged again. This time, it wasn't on the ground floor. It was on the 10th. She stared at the camera feed. She couldn't explain it. The doors of the elevator opened, and standing there was a person, a tall, dark figure in a coat, facing away from the camera. Lena's fingers trembled as she hit the intercom button, the voice coming through the speaker. "Hello? Who are you?" The figure turned, their face hidden in shadow. Then, just as quickly, the elevator doors slammed shut. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the sudden feeling of being watched. The walls seemed to close in. The lights above her flickered, buzzing with the same static that was coming through the elevator speakers. The elevator moved again, but this time it didn't stop. It kept going. And Lena could swear beneath the static she heard whispers. Lena sat frozen in the security room, staring at the elevator display. The floor indicator blinked with each passing second, but the elevator wasn't stopping on any floor. It just kept moving, deeper into the building, farther than it should have gone. The usual chimes of the elevator were replaced by static, the sound of a broken radio dial. The normal hum of the building felt distant now, replaced by a deep, suffocating silence that pressed against her ears. She reached for the intercom button, but hesitated. Who was that person on the elevator? Why had they turned and walked away from the camera? Something was very wrong. But the feeling she had, that gut-wrenching instinct telling her to get out, was quickly overshadowed by the creeping curiosity. The elevator hadn't moved like this before. It was moving on its own accord. Lena picked up the phone and dialed Steve again. No answer. She tried the manager's emergency number. Disconnected. Her pulse quickened as the elevator passed the 10th, the 7th, the 5th floors, until it reached the 3rd floor and finally stopped with a heavy clunk. For a moment, nothing happened. No lights flickered. No elevator music hummed. Just silence. Lena watched, her eyes glued to the camera feed. The elevator doors didn't open immediately. She was about to press the intercom again when the door slowly creaked open. At first, there was nothing, just empty space, the kind of emptiness you would expect from an abandoned building. Then the air seemed to shift. The lights in the hallway flickered and buzzed, casting shadows that seemed to dance and twist unnaturally. A figure appeared at the elevator's threshold, stepping forward. It was a man, his features obscured by the dim lighting. He wore a long coat, the kind you'd expect to see from someone trying to blend into the shadows, trying to hide from the world. His movements were deliberate, slow, and his head remained slightly down, as though he were scanning the floor for something. Lena's hand hovered over the intercom button, her mouth dry. She knew she should speak, tell the person to leave, ask who they were, but her voice wouldn't come. She felt like she was frozen in place. The figure raised his head slowly, and the camera blinked, adjusting the image as his face came into view. Lena gasped. It was her. The same face, her exact features, but worn, older, almost hollow, like it had been pulled from some forgotten nightmare. Her reflection was distorted, twisted, as though it was someone else trying to wear her skin. The figure stared directly into the camera. The eyes were dark, almost hollow, but they burned with an unnatural intensity. They were empty, devoid of any warmth, any humanity. "Lena," the figure whispered through the static. Lena's heart skipped a beat, and her breath caught in her throat. She scrambled for the intercom, but it was too late. The figure had already turned, stepping back into the dark hallway. The elevator doors slid shut, and the static on the feed grew louder, almost drowning out the sound of her racing heartbeat. Lena backed away from the monitor, her eyes darting around the room as if the walls were closing in on her. What was that? Her head spun. She couldn't stay here. She needed to leave, to find someone, to escape this place, but her feet felt as though they were cemented to the floor. It wasn't just fear, it was like something was holding her here. The elevator began to move again, a soft hum, then a loud clunk as the doors opened once more on a new floor. This time, she didn't need the camera feed to tell her what had happened. The sound of the elevator doors opening was enough to make her stomach churn. She stood there, frozen, as the elevator descended. Why is it still moving? She didn't understand why it had opened, or why it was still running. It was almost like the elevator was alive. Or, worse, it was something controlling the building. And it knew where she was. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Lena snapped her head to the side, nearly knocking over the chair. She grabbed her phone, relieved to see it was Steve calling back. "Eve." She nearly shouted into the phone. "Lena, where are you?" His voice sounded strained, frantic. "I'm in the security room. What's going on? What happened to the elevator?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why does it keep moving on its own?" "Lena, get out of there. Now." Steve's voice cracked. "It's happening again. It's not just the elevator, it's the whole building. The elevator doesn't exist anymore." "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" "Listen to me. There's no 13th floor, Lena. There's no 10th floor. Don't let it take you. The building, it doesn't stop at regular floors. It doesn't stop at all." Lena could barely catch her breath. "Steve, you're scaring me." "I'm not trying to scare you, Lena. I'm trying to save you," Steve said, his voice growing fainter. "You have to get out now. Whatever you do, do not get on the elevator. Do not press the button. Don't." The call dropped. Lena looked at the phone screen in shock, her hands trembling. Her breath felt ragged, and the walls around her felt like they were closing in. Every floor the elevator stopped at. Every voice, every shadow in this building had been calling her. But this was different. Steve's warning echoed in her mind, "Don't press the button." The lights flickered again. The static on the screen buzzed. And then, from nowhere, the intercom crackled to life. A voice, distorted, almost like it was trying to force itself through a broken speaker. "Lena, you're not supposed to leave." Her blood ran cold. The voice wasn't Steve's. The figure from earlier flashed in her mind. Her face. And then the elevator dinged. Lena's heart was a drum in her chest. Her hands trembled as she reached for the intercom, desperate to call anyone, but no one answered. The static on the line grew louder, as though the building itself was consuming the sound, drawing it deeper into its metal bones. She looked back at the elevator monitor. The doors were still open, the same dark hallway stretching beyond them, but now the familiar hum of the elevator was gone. The silence was suffocating. It was as though the building was holding its breath, waiting. The camera feed flickered once more, the screen briefly distorting before showing a figure. Lena gasped. The same figure, her face twisted in agony, stepped out of the elevator. But this time, she wasn't standing in the hallway. She was in the elevator, standing directly in front of the camera, staring right into it. Her face was pale, unnaturally so, her eyes wide and unblinking, but her expression, it wasn't the same as before. Now, it was as though she was waiting for Lena to make a move. Lena's throat tightened. The static in the room shifted, growing louder, the distortion turning to something more like a low growl. She tried to back away, but her legs felt weak. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee the building, to never look back. But the figure, her reflection, reached up and placed her hand against the glass of the camera, as if beckoning her forward. What is this? Lena's mind was spinning. Was it a trick? A hallucination? Something that the elevator had created? Or was it a warning? Her fingers hovered over the desk, shaking, but she couldn't move. The voice returned. This time it was clearer, louder. It wasn't just through the intercom. It was everywhere. "You've seen too much, Lena. You have to stay." She spun toward the intercom. There was no way anyone could be speaking through it. She hadn't touched it. The voice continued, now overlapping with something else, a faint murmur, like it was coming from behind the walls, beneath the floor. "You won't leave. You can't leave." A flash of light hit her eyes as the elevator door suddenly closed. The static on the camera feed vanished. Everything went silent. And then it began. A deep, thunderous rumble shook the building. The lights flickered violently, and the walls cracked, the plaster falling in chunks onto the floor. The floor beneath her feet began to shudder, and the temperature dropped rapidly. Lena stumbled back, the desk shaking beneath her. Her mind screamed for her to leave, to run, but she was rooted to the spot, her feet heavy like lead. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, only the faint glow of her phone lit up the room. Her breathing echoed too loudly, but she couldn't stop it. The silence was overwhelming now. It was suffocating. She could barely hear herself think over the pounding in her head. "Lena," the voice whispered again, closer this time, and she felt something brush against her arm. She spun around, but there was nothing there. The elevator, the camera feed, the door. It was all dark, all quiet, but then a faint creak. She turned toward the sound. The elevator door. The elevator. The one that had moved all by itself. It opened again. This time, The doors didn't reveal a hallway. They opened to a space beyond anything Lena had ever seen, a black void that swallowed the light. But there, in the center, was a faint red glow. The same red glow she had seen earlier, coming from the building's control room. The figure from earlier appeared again. Her distorted face, now somehow clearer, stood in the doorway, her mouth moving but not speaking. The red light from the elevator cast an eerie glow around her, making her face look more like something from a nightmare. But it wasn't her. It we, as something else. Lena couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. She reached for her phone, her fingers shaking. The camera feed was still running, but there was something wrong. The elevator wasn't where it should be. The view of the building's hallways, the floors she knew, was gone. Lena, the voice murmured again, and then the figure in the doorway moved. Step by step, it glided toward her, silent but relentless. Before Lena could react, the elevator doors slammed shut with a deafening sound, and everything fell into complete silence. And then the lights blinked back on, the static on her radio stopping. The building was still. Her phone buzzed again, a single text from Steve. "Lena, get out of the building, now." But it was too late. She didn't need to look around to know she wasn't alone anymore. The elevator had found her, and this time, she couldn't escape. If you thought this story was terrifying, the next one will haunt you even more. Hit subscribe if you dare.